thunderstorm when the skin prickles with static. Rachel led the way, her flashlight beam dancing over the peeling Victorian wallpaper. It had been a pristine, high-resolution dream on the dark web forums, but in the flesh, the house was a carcass. The walls were bowed, as if the entire structure were inhaling, pulling the foundation inward to compress the space. "It's not just the age," Sarah whispered, her voice tighter than she intended. She kept her back to the wall, her eyes scanning the shadows that seemed to pool in the corners like spilled ink. "Buildings this old, they settle. They creak. This house, it's holding its breath." Rachel didn't stop. She pushed aside a heavy, moth-eaten curtain that smelled of stale funeral lilies. "That's what the lore said, Sar. The manor isn't a place, it's a living trap. Everyone loves a good ghost story until the floorboards start feeling like muscle." "Funny," Sarah muttered, clicking her own light on. The beam illuminated a portrait of a man whose eyes seemed to track them, not with the standard optical illusion of a painting, but with a predatory, calculated focus. "I thought we were here for the architectural photography, not to be digested by the architecture." Rachel laughed, but the sound was thin, swallowed instantly by the heavy velvet drapes. She moved toward the center of the drawing room. The floor beneath them was uneven, a mosaic of rotted oak and warped floorboards that creaked in a rhythm that felt disturbingly like a slow, labored heartbeat. "Look at this." Rachel pointed her light toward the rug. It had been shoved aside, revealing a seam in the floor that didn't match the grid of the room. It was a perfect, geometric square, cut with an industrial precision that defied the manor's crumbling, colonial aesthetic. Sarah knelt, running a gloved finger along the seam. "This shouldn't be here. There's no subfloor access listed on the original blueprints. This was meant to be solid stone." "Someone didn't want this found," Rachel said, her voice dropping to a low, electric hum of excitement. She gripped the edge of a recessed iron ring she'd pried up with her pocketknife. Her knuckles were white, her face flushed with the kind of thrill that usually preceded a mistake. "Help me." "Rachel, wait. Look at the way the dust settles," Sarah urged, pointing her light at the floor. The dust didn't settle randomly, it drifted in faint, swirling patterns, drawn toward the iron ring as if the cellar door itself were a vacuum. "Everything in this house is moving toward this spot. It's not just a trapdoor, it's a drain." "We didn't come all this way to play it safe," Rachel countered, planting her boots firmly against the rotting floorboards. "On three." Sarah didn't want to. Every instinct, sharpened by years of being the pragmatic anchor to Rachel's impulsive kite, screamed at her to turn back, to smash the window and run until her lungs burned. But the magnetic pull of the house was already working on her. It wasn't just fear, it was a profound, unnatural curiosity that felt like a needle pressed against her prefrontal cortex. 1, Rachel counted. The shadows in the room elongated, stretching toward them like fingers. 2. The temperature dropped until their breath misted in the air, thick and silver in the flashlight beams. 3. With a grunt of exertion, Rachel yanked. The door didn't groan like old wood. It hissed, a sound of pressurized air escaping a vacuum seal. It swung open, revealing a stairwell that plunged into a darkness so absolute it seemed to absorb the light from their lamps. It wasn't the darkness of a basement. It was a hole in reality. A draft wafted up from the depths, a sickening, metallic scent of ozone, copper, and something sweet, like rot disguised by expensive cologne. Rachel stood at the precipice, her face bathed in the sickly yellow glow of her light. She looked back at Sarah, a reckless, beautiful grin spreading across her face. "You wanted a story, Sarah? We just found the prologue." "That isn't a cellar," Sarah whispered, stepping closer despite her better judgment. She peered down the throat of the house. The stairs were lined with cables, thick bundles of black wire that snaked upward into the walls, vibrating with a low-frequency hum that set her teeth on edge. "Rachel, there are wires." "Why are there fiber-optic cables in a 19th century estate?" "Maybe the ghosts have high-speed internet," Rachel quipped, though her eyes had darkened. She stepped onto the first stair. It held, but the wood hummed beneath her boot, a resonance that echoed deep in the foundation of the house. As she descended, the shadows seemed to detach themselves from the walls, trailing behind her like a cloak. Sarah followed, her hand hovering over the cold iron railing, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. The deeper they went, the more the manor changed. The Victorian wood transitioned into cold, sterile concrete. The smell of rot gave way to the sharp, chemical sting of cleaning agents and something else, the faint, buzzing electrical smell of a server room. They reached the bottom, and the light from their flashlights failed to catch the walls. They were standing in a vast, open space, a cavern carved into the rock beneath the island. Rows of monitors sat atop rusted metal tables, their screens dark, their surfaces coated in a thick layer of dust. But in the center of the room, lit by a single, pulsating red light, stood a mahogany desk. On it sat a heavy, leather-bound book, open to a page filled with wet, fresh ink. "This isn't a house," Sarah said, her voice trembling as she swept her light across the wall of screens. "This is a broadcast station. Look." She pointed to a monitor. It flickered to life. A static-filled image emerged, showing the very room they were standing in, captured from a high-angle camera hidden in the rafters. They were on screen. They were being watched. Rachel stepped toward the desk, her hand reaching out toward the ledger. "It's a set, Sarah. We're not exploring. We're being filmed." "Don't touch that," Sarah warned, but it was too late. The moment Rachel's fingertips grazed the parchment, the room erupted. The monitors flared into life, hundreds of them, all showing looped, blurred footage of the manor, of the woods, of people screaming in darkness. The hum in the floor intensified into a roar, a mechanical, hungry sound. "We have to go," Sarah screamed over the rising noise, grabbing Rachel's jacket. "I can't," Rachel whispered, her eyes fixed on the ledger. Her pupils had dilated, consuming the iris until her eyes were nothing but pools of obsidian. "It's calling my name, Sarah. Do you hear it? It's not just a house. It's an audience." Behind them, the shadows, which had seemed like mere tricks of the light, coalesced. They sharpened. They grew teeth, elongated limbs, and the cold, unblinking eyes of predators. The manor wasn't just a trap, it was a cage, and the locks had just